Well, welcome everyone. My name's Rich Simon. I'm editor of Psychotherapy Networker, and I'm your host for this series, Who's Afraid of Couples Therapy? So what we've been doing in this series is really exploring the challenges of being a couples therapy and some of the ways, some of the things about couples therapy and the emotional intensity that one often finds in couples therapy that can make it challenging for so many of us, and particularly those of us who are steeped in the individual therapy tradition. So we're very fortunate today to have a couples therapist, someone who I've known for 15 years and who, in my view, is about as comfortable with all of the twists and turns of couples therapy and all of the intensity and all the emotionality of couples interaction as anyone I know. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce today's guest, Hedy Schleifer. Hedy, from Miami, Florida.
Yes.
You look very sunny. Welcome.
Hi, Rich.
So I just want to let the audience in on my experience. As soon as I knew we were going to do a series on Who's Afraid of Couples Therapy, I thought of you, and I remembered a particular experience I had. My wife Yetta and I were in a couples weekend with you, and you did an exercise with the group that was about as intense an experience that I have ever had, not only in a workshop or in therapy, in my marriage and in my life. Can you describe what it is that you did and how you used that kind of intense experience in the context of what you're trying to accomplish in therapy? So why don't you give people a sense of what and fit this exercise into the context of how you use it?
Okay. Well, I did this exercise, if you remember well, at the end of a workshop where we built the intensity of the connection.
Yeah.
And so every exercise that was there was meant to bring you into deep encounter with each other. And that realm of the encounter was building up in the workshop. And as a result, my belief then is that we really become aware together of the web that holds us. So at the end of the workshop, I am quite confident to do what I did. And I'm going to tell you, of course, what I did, which is that I gave each couple the following sentence, and explaining that in life as a couple, we are most afraid of losing one another, our mortality, and we're afraid to let ourselves deeply, deeply love each other, because there's always that sense that the more I'm going to love you, the more I'm going to lose. Were you the first one to die? And given that in a couple relationship, we will go through illness, we will go through scary diagnoses, we will go through many things that bring us to that edge where we actually are literally afraid, I will lose my partner. And if we don't know how to enter the realm of, and I'll say the sentence, if I never see you again, what I want you to know is, if we can't enter that realm, then these type of events in our life actually aren't lived fully. We will withdraw from connection because we don't know how to say what we would say were I never to see you again. And so the sentence I gave all of you was to actually sit very close, to really deeply look into each other's eyes, and with the connection you had built up over the weekend, to then say, if I never see you again, what I would like for you to know.
Yeah, I just got a wave. I was back there, just even imagining that. Yeah, so it's not something one does in the first moment of the first session of couples therapy. Okay, but kids do not use this at home.
No.
With that supervision. Yeah, that was
The part I want to add here is it's not just that I trust the couple connection at the end of that workshop. I also trust, as I said, the web that was built that holds us as a safety net. So we're in a community of practice, in a sense, a community of practice of being a couple. And in that community, I will then trust myself when I sense the community is alive and well to enter that domain.
Because as you say that, what the other thing that I felt that, because we went off separately to do this say that, have that experience, and just the awareness that it wasn't just us, it wasn't just our own vulnerability, our own mortality that was part of that, but that this was a shared experience, that there's a concept, I guess, you have of the kind of reweaving the web of life, the web of being. And so I felt very much a part of that in that weekend. Okay.
Exactly right.
So maybe we'll get back to that. I just wanted to sort of get people to have a sense of you and the stakes, the emotional stakes that you're capable of playing for, or that level of intensity that you as a therapist feel comfortable with, and what makes that possible. We can talk about this a little bit further down the line. But in terms of, for today, I think part of what may be a place for us to start is that you weren't always a Hedy Schleifer and someone who felt that's a kind of exercise that you can be a leader of with a group of couples, and that you did not pop out of the womb as a couples therapist, though seeing your work, sometimes people might think that you had, so that you really began as an individual therapist, and this did not immediately come together for you. So talk to us a bit about how you started and your discovery of couples therapy.
You know, it's interesting how the personal and the professional weave, because I started out as an individual therapist, but kind of a generalist. You know, I saw families, I saw couples, and I didn't like working with couples. I found couples threatening, and of course it sat on my own marriage, in which I didn't know to live the intensity I wanted to live. I knew to live the intensity in individual therapy. That's where I had the intensity I love. In my own marriage, I didn't know how to really enter it. And interestingly enough, what made my husband and I turn a corner was a first experience, which was Yumi's heart attack at age 48 and a quadruple bypass. And the understanding that there was a lot about life we had not faced, either individually or as a couple, that he suddenly was attacked by his heart, meaning there was a lot we needed to open up together, heart-wise. And that was the beginning of our deepening, our connection, but also the understanding that the heart needs to be wide open. And it began a journey of opening the heart in our relationship. That still did not help me with couples. I was still quite lost. How do I structure the couples work? I understood now. I really am ready to have couples open their heart wide to each other, because we were doing that in our own marriage after Yumi's heart said, "I'll attack you if you don't open." So that was a very powerful turning point. And then the next one was getting to know Imago relationship therapy and theory, and the relational paradigm. And within that, we, for the first time, had a structure that was amazingly helpful. And I continued to develop my understanding of the relational paradigm with the continued development of what I now call the 3 invisible connectors, which is the relational space that was described by Buber, the bridge between the 2 worlds that we are 2 completely different worlds with 2 languages, 2 cultures, 2 rhythms, and how to cross the bridge to the world of the other to honor that space. And then ultimately, and that also is a Buber concept, the encounter, which is, you could say biologically, is limbic resonance, but it's much deeper than that. It's that wordless domain where we feel thoroughly connected, where there are no boundaries, and yet your individuation and intentionality is completely there. So it's hard to put in words, really, but we all know that domain. And so I went from not knowing couples, because I didn't know my own couple, to knowing couples from knowing our own couple, not having a structure, to entering a structure and ultimately arriving at what I now call encounter-centered couples therapy.
Okay, so let's slow down a bit. And let's talk at the nuts and bolts level. So when you were doing this initial work and you were just discovering your own couplehood and you were moving from primarily an identity as an individual therapist, and then you started doing Imago work. So if I was watching what was going on in these couple sessions, what would I have seen? What was the difference moving from one kind of way of working to the other?
I think the very big difference for me was going from being very drawn into content and being a manager of the content, and sometimes getting into complete desperation about the content, and sometimes even recommending for couples to leave each other because I couldn't handle their content. That's one extreme. To actually, for the first time, taking a step back, sitting on my chair, having the couple face each other, and beginning to see that I was teaching a process. And it's that process that has evolved. But the big shift was that I am a guide, I am a coach of a certain kind of process that I would like the couple to embrace. And of course, there are different kind of couples, they embrace it in different ways, but that is what I'm presenting to them, the possibility of now entering content through a process. And I manage the process, they manage the content. And so I am not in their content ever again, which is really a very comfortable position as a therapist, to be able to then watch as the content emerges, unfolds, develops, and to be able to assist in deepening what goes on, amplifying, deepening, but never inside. So that's the big difference.
So just so people who may not be familiar with the Imago process, why don't you describe the fundamentals of that process and how that characterizes what you do?
Well, the first thing that I want to say about Imago relationship theory that is very relaxing for a couples therapist is to know that only the most incompatible people are going to make a couple. And that the couples are people who can least give each other what each wants the most and are chosen at the unconscious level to wake up the worst relational nightmare. So just in knowing that, you know that every couple is going to come to you with a nightmare. You can already relax. If there's a nightmare, they're a couple and they are just in the right.
So that's a reassuring assumption to make for you.
In terms of the theory. Now, in terms of the process, I have now evolved the process into introducing couples to the three invisible connectors. I introduce them to the relational space. And the way I introduce them to the relational space is by having them have a 13-minute horrendous conversation about their most difficult, loaded, embarrassing issue. And when they then externalize and look at themselves and see what just happened, they themselves describe a polluted space. So I am not the person who introduces the concept. They do through the description of their worst dance But once they show me the polluted space, I can then say, your job as a couple is to honor that space.
So how might that go? So if you were to give us an example of what a couple might say in that first stage.
So in my structure, it's already a second stage, because I will have them dream about the ultimate they want in relationship. But then I will invite them to have their worst conversation. And so what happens, it could be the conversation about the affair. It could be a conversation about sexuality and how it absolutely doesn't work. It can be a conversation about money, the children, the in-laws. That conversation is that horrible conversation that couples have. I give them 13 minutes, 13 because in Hebrew, 13 is love, and it's also one. So it's unity. I chose 13. After 13 minutes, I go, stop.
That's their bar mitzvah moment, that 13th moment.
That's the bar mitzvah moment. I hadn't thought of that. Then I have them look at that couple from the outside as if they were sitting where I was sitting and saw that couple in a restaurant, but they don't know their language because this couple comes from another planet, speaks another language, and I have them just describe the process they saw. So the planet is called Wygelia. There's a Wygelian man, there's a Wygelian woman, and the couple suddenly enters into the realm of metaphor. The man seems to be holding back from arrows that are coming at him. He's built a wall. He's got a little window there through which he's looking at the woman. He always keeps looking at her, but he's now behind a thick concrete gray wall. The woman is really sending arrows. She's got a bag filled with them, and they just seem to keep going. But at one point, she's exhausted from it. She resigns herself. She pulls away. And that's when he starts looking from behind the wall to see if she's still there. So they are really describing the dance, the survival dance. They've been dancing their whole entire marriage. Mm-hmm. That's at the point at which, and then I say, and what's in the middle? And they'll say broken arrows, there's a fire starting, there's a vortex sucking all the energy. Meaning they will describe the space in between without me ever having said a word about it. Mm-hmm. That's when I introduce the idea, the Buberian idea of the sacred space between people, that once we honor that space, we can emerge and unfold as the potential we are as a human being. If we don't know about the space, we will automatically pollute it. And usually what does happen is that in danger, one energy grows big and one energy becomes constricted, and the couple themselves will actually describe that. She seems to be going on and on. Those arrows are coming out. He seems to get smaller and smaller. He's like a little dwarf behind his wall. So that I can then explain the pollution that happens through that dynamic of the maximizing energy and minimizing energy. I did then describe the space, the responsibility to keep it sacred. I introduce the concept of the sanctity of the space. I then introduce the bridge and the two worlds, and now it's very clear to them. They've just described their dance. They can see the two worlds more clearly than they ever saw them, because it's not with the content inside. It's devoid of content. Mm-hmm. And then I talk to them about the encounter. Couples always know the encounter. They've had quite a few of them, but it's an elusive thing. They don't know how it happened. They don't know how they got out of it. They are accidental tourists in the domain of encounter. And so I tell them that with a visit across the bridge, learning how to become bilingual, learning how to learn the language of their partner, hearing it with new ears, looking at their partner with new eyes, they will actually be able to honor the space and begin to know how to create the space of the encounter in an intentional way. Mm-hmm. So the way the visit works is that now they've had the experience of being at a distance and polluting the space. I will bring them very, very close to each other. I explain that in order to hear well, we have to touch skin to skin because our skin is also talking. Mm-hmm. And our nerve endings as a couple, we have a secret code when we give each other our hands. They will begin to squeeze, the thumbs will start moving. There is a language that goes on between couples that even the person sitting very close to them, like I am sitting there, will not understand and will not know. It is a domain accessible only to them, but they wouldn't want to miss it in the visit over the bridge. And so I have them actually hold hands. And for some couples, it's, oh, finally. And for some couples, it's, I can't touch you. But I'm dealing with something much deeper than a psychological touch. It's actually biological, and it's also very helpful for the creation of limbic resonance. So much research has shown that we remember what people tell us when we're touched by them. So the touch is really important there. Also the gazing at about, let's say, 18 inches, the gazing of our early primal times at birth, really, and as little babies, when we are real masters at understanding the landscape of the face. And so I'm telling the couple that they're going to become masters again at knowing the landscape of the face of their partner, because from that close, they're going to begin to see how rich that landscape is, the colors, the different expressions, but they will also begin to see some of what cannot be said in words, waves of emotion that have tears in them, fear, rage, whatever the landscape, the emotional landscape that you can begin to see forming on the face. And instead of being afraid of it, you become a witness to your partner's landscape. As you visit, and that's a metaphor I love to use, as you visit a certain neighborhood. So our world is filled with neighborhoods. There are good neighborhoods, bad neighborhoods, tough neighborhoods, scary neighborhoods. There are neighborhoods I don't dare to go alone. I need my partner to cross the bridge so I can go there, because by myself, I'm afraid of that neighborhood inside of my own world. So this is what I'm really teaching the couple once they've externalized their survival dance. I'm teaching them visits to neighborhoods. The various neighborhoods. So it could be the sexual neighborhood, for example. Couples really don't know how to safely visit each other's sexual neighborhoods. So that could be a neighborhood that we visit. I don't start with a sexual neighborhood. I start with a precious neighborhood. And what I mean by that, a place where I feel alive, where I feel good, worth, a place in me where things go well. And I start by couples visiting a precious neighborhood because I'm just teaching them how to be present to each other fully.
And so as you do this, so physically you have people who are, when you say they're touching, just describe kind of the concrete detail of it. And then when you begin, I think you said earlier, before you get to these troubled neighborhoods, you might begin this process with a precious neighborhood. So again, just if you can just give us a concrete idea of what you do as a therapist and what instructions you give to the couple.
Okay, so first of all, I bring them really close. I have them touch hands, and that sometimes takes a little time for the hands to work it out there. I bring their eyes very close, and I ask them to look at each other with new eyes. I quote Marcel Proust, the French poet, that the real adventure of life is not discovering new landscape, but seeing the ones you know with new eyes. And so I have them really look at the landscape of their partner's face with new eyes, and I have them, and I say some things like, thank you for the journey up to this point. I say those words, but I have them look at what happens to the landscape. Thank you for being my friend through some of the tough things we've gone through. Thank you for being alive in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. I say some of these things that shift the landscape completely. Sometimes people at that time will begin actually to cry. One person starts crying, the other one. They're not sure why, but it's a kind of reunion grief. They find each other again in this wordless space where I'm simply saying, you're alive, I'm alive. Thank you for that. Thank you for being you. Thank you for the journey, even the tough stuff. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your resilience. So the beginning of a visit is an expression of gratitude for the present moment.
Mm.
And that in itself already shifts the whole atmosphere. There is already there the beginning of the encounter.
Mm.
And then there's a host. One person develops the art of hosting, the other person develops the art of visiting. And in my question to them, before I put them that way, I asked them to choose. And in that choice, often some of the patterning of the relationship will come out, like he'll say ladies first. And I say, well, ladies first is not a choice. Or she'll say, whatever you want, sweetie. Well, whatever you want, sweetie, is not a choice. And what's very interesting is that in having to choose to stretch into, first of all, a choice. Secondly, will I host you? Will I visit you? And make it a real choice. They already learn that a real relationship is about constant choosing. You choose maybe what's hardest for you to do. So that in itself becomes a very interesting learning. Who's going to be the host? Who's going to be the visitor? Mm-hmm. And then the host says a very simple sentence. I'm inviting you to cross the bridge and come to me. Mm-hmm. I'd like to say something very important to you. Uh-huh. I then guide the other person to take this as a moment of learning how to come to be present, because your own world, everything in it is the past till now. So you're leaving the past to enter the potential of the present with your partner. You have no idea. You're going into unknown territory. Mm-hmm. It is the present. And so that distinction between my world, everything in it, every neighborhood, everything that I hold dear, my opinions, everything is now already the past. Crossing the bridge is the present. Being with my partner, seeing them with new eyes is the present. And so I often repeat the date. You know, it's November 2nd, 2011. This moment, right now. So there it goes.
President is intruding on us, Hedy.
So as the person lands, I amplify this moment of connection, really to see each other in this moment. And then the other person will take them into a precious neighborhood. What I mean by that is a place that I have really wanted to share with you, where I feel fully alive, where my life has meaning, where things are important to me. And people take each other to very amazing places. You know, like I had once a very disconnected couple, and the precious neighborhood for the man was every once in a while on Friday night, Shabbat dinner, when everything works out well and there is a sense of holiness. And he took his wife there. And of course, she had not seen him in that light in so long, because the content of their relationship had been so polluting for both of them, that having the possibility of visiting together a Friday night Shabbat dinner with a kind of holiness that's there. And he took her, I'll use the metaphor, he took her to every street, every alley, and even main square of that Friday night when it is really holy. And the reason to go there first is because they're learning how to be present. I know I'm going to go with them to the toughest neighborhood, whatever that is, could be the affair. But to first get to know each other again, where they feel alive and where their humanity shines. And what the visitor does is, I say, you're learning a language. I hear you say really the words, but to wait till those words have actually penetrated, because you can actually repeat words, or you can let words penetrate deeply till you feel that these words transform you, and then you repeat them. And I like the formulation, have I got you, which is you subject, not have I got it, which is it object. Have I got you, you subject. And so the host knows the visit is done when they have what I call a cellular sense of feeling satiated. I feel physically that you have been with me. I feel nourished. I feel connected. I feel full. And I want couples to begin to know that sensation of satiation that comes from the actual nourishment of the encounter. That's the end of the visit. So that the sign I'm done is not content driven, it is physically driven. What happens inside of our bodies when we feel when we feel felt, that experience that I think Daniel Siegel describes, feeling felt. When we feel felt, what happens in our body? And that's the end of one visit. And then I will do a precious neighborhood on the other side. And that could be, for example, a person taking their partner to their professional life, because that's where they feel alive. They feel dead in their marriage, but they feel profoundly alive in their profession. And suddenly their partner sees a landscape they never see, because they see the aliveness, the passion, the excitement, the interest, the engagement that clearly needs them to be transported to their connection, but at least they know it now. They see it. So that's the first visit across the bridge.
And so for the couples, you're able to. So you're not getting into troubling material early on. You're doing this, and so in your experience, most couples who come to see you for a first session, this is something with your help and your structuring. They can make this kind of a visit.
Well,
with a full. Go ahead.
I only work now for either a full day or 2 full days, usually 2 full days. So I really structure each piece of that encounter with me, and I know I have all the time in the world. I even have the possibility of them sleeping one night and coming back to talk about the main take-home concept that has come out of that first day. So I've given myself, and that's also an evolution, because I've noticed that as I'm slowing down the work, an hour and a half just wasn't enough. Well, I went to 4 hours. Well, it wasn't enough, and so because I do want to get to the place that we started our talk with, the place where they could say to each other, feeling held by the fabric of life, if I never see you again, what I want you to know is, I want to get to that place. And I realize that I'm giving myself more and more time because I want them to feel held by that fabric at the end of our work together. So it's much bigger than me. It's much bigger than them. It's really the fabric of being.
So the fact that people are able to do that doesn't mean that all the difficulties in life are cleared up. So, but they have a different experience, I would imagine. Most people, most couples, I would think, certainly lots of couples, they've never had an experience like that.
They've never had, and I think often of the 4 levels of learning, and I'm not sure whose theory it is. You probably will know.
Bateson.
Okay, level
1, learning 3.
Yeah, level 0, where really you haven't learned a thing. Level 1, you've learned a skill, but you don't know what to do with it. Level 2, you've learned a skill and you can integrate it, The level 3 is where it's transformative. You will never be the same person again. You have just integrated something where there's a before, there's an after. It isn't a skill you've learned, even though you've learned skills. The transformation that has taken place in terms of the learning, and that's why I've made it 2 days. I want level 3 learning. I want the couple to be able to say there's a before, there's an after. We are not the same. We've tasted something that has us go, that suffering was useful because we are now different people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So you're teaching them, what that exercise does is it teaches them a possibility. Doesn't mean they stay there. Doesn't mean that that necessarily without you that they can really get there again. But at least they have a possibility in their relationship they didn't have before.
Exactly. And the transformation that is internal also goes with them, so that they always have in the implicit memory the climate that they internalized. That climate lives inside of them, and that really is level 3 learning. So I do that capacity human beings have to internalize a climate and have that in them forever.
Okay.
In order to recreate the encounter, they would then have to redo the skills they've learned. Some couples will never do it, but they'll never go back to where they were before because they've internalized something that lives in them.
At least they recognize there's an alternative.
Yes.
To what they thought was hopeless, and that they need to repeat it over and over again. So what is it from that point? So that's you. It sounds like you typically in your work, and I can certainly understand this from knowing you get off with a bang. A sharp departure for them, probably from what they thought about couples therapy, this terrible thing we have to dredge up the horrors of our relationship.
Right.
You get a very different kind of experience. They have this possibility that of meeting and having this kind of a visit and going across the bridge. What's the work? How do you think then from that point? So there's a possibility. You give them a direct possibility, experience of a possibility. What's the work once that's happened for them, and you're hoping that they have a new paradigm in mind about relationship? What's the work of couples therapy in your view?
So for me, the work of couples therapy is to assist couples to go from their survival dance, from their automatic survival dance, which I call being abducted by the extraterrestrials, because now they know that couple they saw in the restaurant are the extraterrestrials who have got room and board in their home for a long time. But it's an abduction. Going that from the abduction by the extraterrestrials to the encounter of the souls, essence to essence, giving each other a chance to create a living laboratory where two grown-ups can become adults. And so the work is having the couple recognize the survival dance, and I do write to them the whole script of, I call it the Wygelian couple in the diner. I will send that to them so they can put it on their refrigerator. As soon as the Wygelians come to adopt them, they can scream, the Wygelians are here. And, they can begin to recognize that there is no content really attached to that dance. It's pure survival. Even though the content is very attractive, it's pure survival. So from the abduction to then the slow work of getting to know one another in all the neighborhoods of our world. So Yumi and I, after 45 years of marriage, have just now designed a new workshop called The Art of the Sexual Connection. We're ready to tell that part of our story and to invite couples to visit the sexual neighborhoods in various ways, including what we call the toughest sexual neighborhood, because every couple has got also in their sexuality what I call the survival knot. It's the place where there's no energy, because one survival pattern meets another. And in this case, one sexual survival pattern meets another sexual survival pattern. So we've designed this visit that opens up the energy there so we can be creative sexually in that place where at first the Wygelians got into bed with us. So it's kind of, exactly, yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like I see couples therapy as my guiding a couple from that abduction to their intentional coming to know one another as two very different people, honoring each other's differences, rhythms, language, culture, and as a result, being able to have a real encounter of two very different people. So that journey.
And so some couples make that full journey. Some couples don't. What is it? Where do things break down? Where do they get stalled? What determines how far along, from your observation, both in terms of the couple and perhaps in terms of you and what you can and can't do as a therapist? What keeps that from happening more often, or what are the factors that limit that journey?
You know, I noticed that question relates to a developmental to the developmental stages, because couples who are developmentally further along can more easily recognize the Wygelian dance, stop it, and go into an intentional, I want to know you. Mm-hmm. Let's bridge to each other.
Okay.
Couples, for example, who have been wounded pre-verbally, the survival dance is at that level. So the Wygelian abduction is complete. It's like they don't even know they've been abducted. It's harder for them to go, oh, it's those extraterrestrials, because the identification with and the sense of I'm going to be annihilated here is so profound, and the lack of attachment there, so that it's harder to for that couple, it's harder to trust. I can stop that dance and you're going to be there, and yes, you are on the other side of the bridge. For that couple, I'm all alone and you're going to destroy me, or I'm all alone and I'm going to destroy you. They are inside of that. And so 2 days with me do not actually shift. There sometimes even isn't a level 3 transformation.
Yeah.
It's still a skill. It's a skill. See, I know the couples leaving home is something they can use if there's been a level 3 transformation. But if it's still a skill they do understand, they do practice under my guidance, but the level 3 has not happened. I know.
Or them, or whatever the language, it's not incorporated.
Right. Yeah. It's not incorporated. Rarely do I get a couple where it's level 1, meaning it is a skill and they don't understand where to put it in their lives. Those couples don't come to see me. I guess my reputation is such, you're going to learn such and such, know, and those couples don't come to me. So it's self-selected. But I do get couples where I can see that the level 3 has not happened. It's at the level 2, it's a skill. They've learned a way, but they haven't been transformed. There, I need to work more. And I will invite them. I write couples a report of the 2 days. They get a report of everything they've done, their vision, their initial vision for the relationship, the Wygelian dance, the survival dance, the precious neighborhood, the learning how to cross it. Where was that neighborhood? What does it represent in their life? The toughest neighborhood, where did they go? Now, the couple who stays at the skill level will not go to the toughest neighborhood. I can't take them there because it requires that level 3. It's on the second day. I ask on the second day, what was the core concept you came out of day 1? And if the core concept hasn't been a level 3 transformation, I can't go to the toughest neighborhood. I'll do other things. There are more neighborhoods to visit, but I won't go to that toughest neighborhood work, which is, again, very transformational. And couples who go there, again, feel like there's a before and an after.
Yeah. So this is very interesting. We had a dialogue between Sue Johnson and Terry Rio, who are two couples therapists and who you know. And so part of that discussion was about what's the role of the therapist. And so what Sue was saying was that the way she looks at it is the therapist really is this attachment figure. And people are stuck, and I think there'd be a lot of overlap, I think, in your account of what happens with couples and hers. And then Terry, and I turn to Terry, and he does, so she does what I will crudely refer to as, female therapy, and he does guy therapy, and crudely, and forgive me, Terry and Sue. And he's a coach. And he's and he says, I asked him, are you an attachment figure? And he said, no, I'm a coach. And he's helping them to make decisions and clarifying what the decisions are. So where do you come out on that? I'm an attachment figure, I'm a coach as my primary identity as a therapist.
I see myself as a guide across the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And I do only that. I don't see myself as an attachment figure. I do not enter their content. I don't have them relate to me. They do not look at me. If they look at me, I send them back to each other. They are each other's attachment figure, and I will make sure they get that. I am not that. And the only time they speak to me is in the beginning when we look at their dreams. And yes, I do cross the bridge to them. And yes, they do experience me as someone who sees them, but I'm tough because if their dream don't match what a marriage is or what life is about, I can get very tough. And I can say, wait. You've come to me because you want your marriage and that's your dream. So I'm not an attachment figure.
Okay.
When I'm done with these 6 dreams, people have deeply clarified what they really want. And it sometimes takes a long time because when it makes no sense what they really want in marriage, we'll look at that. So that first piece of the wildest dream gives me sometimes an occasion to be quite a tough person.
So when you say, clarify that a bit more, Hedy. So when you're saying, so you'll confront them. What is it that you're doing when you're being tough?
Hear it.
Give us some examples of that.
Let's say somebody says, my wildest dream is that my wife think I am amazing. Let's say that's his wildest dream. Well, I will hear it, so you'd really like your wife to think you're amazing.
Okay.
So marriage is really not a guarantee that anybody's going to think you're amazing. Your wife is going to learn about you, and she might, with time, discover that you are amazing. But that can't be your wildest dream, because if that's your wildest dream, there's nothing for us to work here. I want my husband to constantly visit my family, and to feel good with my family. Well, hey, now people's wildest dreams, once you start working with them, become actually essential, and they become very touching. It becomes like a poem. Once people focus in terms of what they really, really want, like the man with, I want my wife to think I'm amazing, may ultimately come to, I would like to reclaim my self-worth, and I would like to come to know myself as who I really am. And I know that that's going to take time, but I'd like my wife's help in knowing who I truly, truly am. So we work with that till the dream is something that we can work with, because yes, I know she's going to visit his neighborhood. She's going to get to know him. She's actually going to think, I know she's going to think he's amazing after a while, but that can't be a dream. So I work with that's why I start with the dreams, because I want to know who's come to me, what do he want, and I don't stop till on the horizon are 6 dreams that make sense in terms of a journey of connection. Then I invite them to have that conversation. You see, so when they have that conversation, I already know who they are in their essence, and I can say quite clearly to them, these Wygilians aren't you. I met you in your dream.
Okay.
You see that distinction? And that's where I see my role as a therapist, is leading people from that survival pattern into their essence. So I start with the essence that I will confront there. If I get something that, makes no sense, then I go to the pattern, then I come back to how will you now go to your dream.
So that's interesting as you're describing that, because this is part of this conversation between Terry and Sue, who really define, I think, a number of these very central dimensions of being a couples therapist. And they were talking about, Sue took exception to this term, truth-telling. Sort of when you're confronting where someone's, in your case here, where the dream seems out of relationship to what you think of as a reality that's possible within a couple's relationship. So what enables you to get away with that? Because that's a tough, to tell somebody, that dream you have that you nurture in your heart of hearts.
It's not going to work for your marriage.
That's a toughie. So how do you get away with it?
Look, I've had an affair. My big dream is my wife forgives me completely and we move on.
Okay.
Moving on from an affair is a process. So I will hear it because I understand why someone suffers the result of an affair and would like to move on. Understand fully. And when I hear it with compassion. So because I'm compassionate. Because I've lived some tough things in my own life. That's why I'm compassionate, not because I'm an attachment figure. I'm compassionate because I know toughness in life. But I will say, forgiveness is a process. The dream can't be she has forgiven you. Let's look again. What is the dream here? And then he might say, the dream is that I can come clean and I can then I can really have her know me where I took another path and with her help enter the path of a new marriage. Yes. And in which forgiveness is a part of it. Yes, because I know I can work with that. So I will look at what can I work with? As the guide over the bridge, what can I work with? There are things I can work with, like she has forgiven you. What can I do with that? So I'm a guy. And I'm a gal. I'm a guy and I'm a gal. I'm whatever's needed in that.
You're whatever's needed.
In that first piece.
Yeah.
To have 6 dreams that I can work with them towards.
So jumping ahead a bit here with this, when is it done? When's your sense? What happens? What tells you I've helped these folks sufficiently? This is they don't need to have me as part of their ongoing life.
Yeah, I've shifted that whole idea because I don't know when it's done. I just give them 2 days of my life, and in those 2 days, they have me 100%.
Okay.
And then they don't have me anymore. Besides the report I will send them, which is long. I put everything in it. They can read this report and relive all the learnings. They have a book. I give them a journal. And at every juncture of our 2 days, I will have them integrate through 4 learnings or relearnings or interesting ideas. And so that journal gets filled up in the 2 days. I write constantly because I'm going to send them the report. They write at every juncture. And again, there I can become a guy, if that's what a guy is. But no, not a guy. Sometimes people learn things that actually aren't what the purpose of connection and that particular visit was about. They'll go somewhere And that means, and I can't think of something right now, but it means something that isn't going to be supportive of their continued relationship. And so I will get in there and say, wait. That's an interesting idea you just had.
Mm-hmm.
I will repeat it. I will even understand it. But I will say, that's not helpful. Take a look again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will have him cross this or her cross this out in the book and have the new idea that actually is useful for the journey of connection in the book, because that journal continues to be the journal they will be using after their today with me. So they're done with me when they're done with me. You know, I give them what I have.
Yeah.
Some people come back. And when they come back, I will go back to the core, to the toughest neighborhood. That's what I do again and again to open that up.
That's lovely. I mean, it's there's so many images that come to mind as you're describing this. This seems like a very effective way to capture the imagination of people and this domain of relationship that for many people, and particularly guys, we don't have a map, and then you're giving us. You're it sounds like you're a great coach. You're able to, what a coach does is take something, a complicated skill, and then breaks it down in a ways that the person can really envision it, and then you can work on pieces of it, and eventually, you hope, develop it more. Now, so my question to you, and we just have a few minutes left here. So at this stage of development, you've been doing this for a while. You clearly, from my view, both as listening to you here today and having done a weekend with you and seen you in action, you really are one of the masters of working with couples. What's the limitation for you as a couples therapist right now? What keeps you from being even more effective than you might be? What's the learning challenge for you at this stage of your career?
You know, it's very interesting that you asked the question. It's when I cannot assist a couple in firing the Weigelian extraterrestrials. It happens rarely. It just happened, you know, a couple that came to see me from our 2-day experience.
Yeah.
And it was clear that Weigelian couple was just entering the room from everywhere. I just owned it. I said, you know, I'm trying to teach you something, but those Weigelians, they seem to have a real grab on you. And what I teach is really to fire them. And I don't know if we can do this together. And then I don't take their money, you know. You know, it's like I teach this.
I see.
And you see what I mean? This is what I teach. And I don't know how to fire those. I'm not the one to fire them. You are the one. And they don't seem to want to leave you. You've given them room and board for so long. And they understood that piece. It couldn't. It was, you know. That's my limit. I sometimes can't do it. I mean, the couple has to be really willing to transition from the survival dance of coping to living in connection.
Yeah.
And I won't do it for them. And they decide, you know, and if that doesn't work, it's very interesting. Before I had that one, your question wouldn't have been so easy for me to answer because it's worked, you know, it self-selects anyway. People come to me because they know they're going to learn this.
That's right.
That couple was pushed into this therapy by their therapist who's hopeless, etc. This. Hedy is not a master, she's a magician. You understand? And I'm not a magician. I'm a master, but not a magician.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we're just about out of time here. If Hedy is, what's people want to follow up with you? They want to your trainings, opportunities to learn from you in various ways. How can they do that? Everyone will have a link to your website as part of the series. Are there some events coming up?
I'm doing an encounter-centered couples therapy training in February in Miami.
Okay.
And I'll be using for the first time the DVD, the 10-part DVD that I have created following a couple through the process that I described to you. And
okay.
so the training will have clips of that,
the actual work.
Of the actual work, and I will then take the therapist through the whole structure and the rationale behind it all, and my basic 3 invisible connectors: the space, the bridge, and the encounter.
Okay. So people can really get a chance to see you in action. That's great.
Right.
And then on your website, your other kinds of training events and other materials are available.
I'm actually starting, but that is closed now, a master class for 3 years. Next week, therapists from around the world are coming, and it's going to be a community of practice.
Okay.
I was really inspired by your letter about the community of practice, and we're going to work together for 3 years on encounter-centered couples therapy, a laboratory for the relational paradigm.
Sounds very exciting. What an experience for all of them, for all of you.
Yes.
Well, so what I would say to our audience, you'll see at the bottom of your screen a comment board. Those of you, this is if you're like me, there are all kinds of images and thoughts and connections that have been stirred up by what Hedy's had to say and how she's described her work in this such a vivid roadmap of this process of couples trying to create a relationship and build their bridge for each other. Take a moment, your thoughts, if you have some questions for Hedy, she has agreed she will check our comment board. She will not write an encyclopedia in response to each, but I'm sure she'll be interested to hear your reactions, and that the conversation, this incredibly rich and an emotionally full conversation that we've had, will continue in the most meaningful way beyond just what's happened between the two of us, but with all of you who've been listening to this and participating in it in your way, and take it the next step. Hedy, thank you so much. I've been on a long trip here with you, so you've brought up, I'm thinking my own relationship. I'm remembering what a terrific experience it was to be able to work with you, and I have all kinds of new ideas about couplehood thanks to our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rich. I've enjoyed it very much.
Take care. Well, and there's more to come in Who's Afraid of Couples Therapy. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.